Gentlemen, good afternoon. How are y'all doing?
Great. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing good. Roger, you're good too?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. We're just going to go, and I don't really have any notes, and that's intentional because I want this episode to be totally unique because, Professor, you're really, I guess, one of the first professors that we're having that is, I guess, the longest time, that has spent the longest time with one academy. You've been I guess it was the Gracie Academy before it was Gracie University. You were with them even before that, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
So that's 20 plus years.
Yes, so just to clarify that, just really quick, I started around 97, 98 under a guy called Eddie Camden from Tiger Academy in Atlanta. He was a Pedro Sauer black belt. I think he's now a 4th degree black belt. He's got promoted from the academy itself. Helio Gracie, when he was alive, his first tri-points black belt came from Helio himself. And I was with Eddie from white belt to purple belt. And then once I got purple belt around 98, that's when I got associated directly with Ryron and Henner. So I've been with them since 97 or 98. And from purple on to now, which I'm now a 3rd degree black belt. So.
Okay, so dovetailing off of that, what would you say is the similarity or the thing that makes those systems, I guess, or those methodologies most similar, and what differentiates them? Even though they're the same thing, what kind of makes them their unique, self-sustaining or their own thing?
Yeah, well, Eddie came from the Gracie lineage, so from day one I was under a self-defense being the main priority. Interesting enough, Eddie Camden is now part of our organization, so he's also one of us at Gracie University. There was really no difference other than the fact that I just got a little bit closer to the source, right? So, Eddie was direct lineage with the Gracies, but, if he was the interim person, it was Pedro Sauer, Eddie Camden, and then me. And then when I moved to the academy, it was Ryron, Henner, and then me, right? So, yeah, but as far as focus, as far as the approach to jiu-jitsu, it's always been self-defense as a main priority.
So in this entire stretch of time, were the techniques evolving, or was it always a set, not a set number of techniques, but a curriculum that existed the entire time? Was it always there, or has it evolved? As some people say that jiu-jitsu has basically evolved in the past few years. Is this the case?
As far as having a structured curriculum, I think that is the major contribution that Ryron and Henner have done through Gracie University. I think everyone before that, including Eddie Camden, created his own structure, of course, under the guidance of the Gracies, but this became the standard, right? So the Gracie University curriculum is standardized across the world of all of our affiliates. So that makes it a much more consistent look and feel for our students, especially if they travel from one, certified training center to another. There is, other than the style of teaching, which everybody has a different style, but the actual techniques are pretty consistent throughout. As far as the evolution of jiu-jitsu, I think the evolution happens a lot more in the sports setting. Just because you have a lot more freedom since you don't have to worry about strikes of any kind, right? So
Right.
in that sense, the evolution is amazing, and there is benefit to that, right? Like you are being challenged in your coordination, your balance, your flexibility. But when it comes to self-defense, I think that really gets filtered down, right? Like it's very different to, for example, go for an arm lock while somebody can punch you, right? So, or a triangle, for example, and somebody can punch you while you're doing it. So again, survival is the number one mindset and self-defense, and you really have to focus on the control aspects to make sure that you're not getting hit, which is something that you don't have to worry about in the sports setting. Not to this or go against it, but the focus is different. Therefore, the techniques, I think, are more basic, more applicable.
Yes.
The technique itself is basic. The fire that you have to do them under, or the stress, is way more intense, right? So I would say that it's closer to MMA than it is to sport.
Right, yes, because so let's see, the attack potential in sport jiu-jitsu is the best sportive technique that the person can muster under the rule set and time limit that you're experiencing.
Yes.
And as far as, our lineage, and I guess all of our lineages, this is one of the only times that I could say that, all three of ours, the thing that matters most, or rather, I guess the only thing that matters is if you can survive, protect your face, use natural body movements, energy efficiency, and the techniques work in a sportive or in self-defense or a sportive context. If they adhere to those principles, within that filter, then it's good to go. They're effective, then it's all good. If they're not, if they don't work for punch protection, or let's say a technique is like fantastic and people are tapping each other, or they're tapping out the world's best sport jiu-jitsu champions with this technique, but you will get hit in the face at least twice if you do the technique. Then we'll never do it. We'll never do the technique one time ever. We might train to defend it, but we'll never teach it and we'll never do it. And
yes.
that's the difference. You agree with this?
Absolutely. And and also like for example, this is what I mean about the approach, right? For us, surviving stronger than you, right? I personally myself, I'm a 5'7", 152 pound guy who is older. I'm 61 years old. Most of my students are much bigger than me, right? So the expectation that, forget about what belt I am, the expectation of going against somebody that is 250 or above, against someone like me, surviving is winning. So if we were in a sports setting and I was a few points behind and we have 45 seconds left on the clock, I'm not practicing survival. I'm practicing pushing the action so I can at least turn that around, get the points I need to win. But that's not practicing survival. That's a very risky venture, right? So it's kind of like win at all costs, or at least get defeated trying. That's competition. That's why people win and lose all the time. But if Helio used to call it, when you get submitted, it's like a mini death, right? Like unacceptable. So that's a different focus.
Yes, and in a sportive context, the same situation that you're just talking about there, 30 seconds, 45 seconds on the clock, even if you did go completely nuts and you were able to catch that person and then the time ran out. So you caught him with like 2 seconds on the clock, tapped him out, the time ran out, and you fall out on your back completely exhausted.
Correct.
Is that really a victory? Because if you had not finished that submission or whatever it was, you would be on your back, completely exhausted, no energy, and there is no clock. So what now?
Yes, exactly. Like that approach is totally different if we had no time limits, which is why when the UFC changed that rule, that's when the Gracie said, this is not good for us, because now it becomes more a competition among athletes who can push the action more as compared to a style among the different martial arts and who can win against somebody much bigger and stronger. That's why we have weight classes right now. If you had 5 minutes against somebody that's 50 pounds heavier, no contest. Bigger guy wins every time, right?
Yes.
Hoist had a chance because he had no time limits.
Which makes it even more impressive that Hoist was able to stick around for a while and fight, those guys with time limits. And
I know, he's amazing. Yes.
So that's just amazing. Hoist is an amazing athlete on top of being everything that we train, our best to be. He's on top of that an amazing athlete, an amazing champion, and just an unbelievable fighter. But this is one of the things, Professor, that we are kind of on a mission to fight against, is that a lot of guys these days, there's a trend of Gracie hating, and it's like almost a popular thing to hate on the Gracies. And one of the things that people like to say is, well, the Gracies pulled out of the UFC when people became good, when people started to understand, that's what they're doing. Well, the Gracie said, I'm out. And this is not the case. Exactly the way that you described it is the truth of the matter. With points, with time limits, let's say a 200-pound wrestler who has never done a class of anything in his life as far as jiu-jitsu or stand-up or anything, that wrestler has a potential to take us down and hold us down for 5 minutes and do no damage, but ultimately win the fight because of the
absolutely.
So
yes,
what glory or what does that prove about whose style is more effective? All that proves is with the rules, you can use a certain amount of control to use the rules to your advantage. And that's why we're out. That's why they're out. Because it's not about style versus style. It's about control versus, not being controlled, basically. And I don't have any problem with somebody holding me down. If they're not doing damage, I don't mind being held down all day, really. Does it bother you?
No, absolutely. Yes. We have to, especially the way we train, we have to be comfortable in discomfort because, like you said, a 250-pound guy, and I feel this every time I roll with my students. I cannot move until they decide to move themselves to do something, right? So if you're in a superior position, you're holding me down, and I'm trying to force the escape, I'm going against you physically, right? It's at that point, it's more about who is the bigger, stronger, athletic individual. It's not the jiu-jitsu mindset. The jiu-jitsu mindset is when is the right time to move. And, I like to talk, I like to give analogies like in different ways to get the point. And let's use the analogy of American football. Well, one person has the ball. They're playing offense. The other team is playing defense. right? And it's a whole totally different mindset when you're playing defense versus offense, right?
Right.
So that's the same thing. Like we are in the fight, and if I'm in an inferior position, it's not my time to move. I'm not going to snap that ball playing defense.
Right.
It's not my place. And if I move at all as a defensive player, guess what? False start. So it's the same thing.
That is exactly right. And what we have in a sported competition is two dudes trying to snap the ball the entire time, pretty much. Two sides are trying to play offense the whole time. And, you know, there's value for sure to sharpening your ability to play offense when somebody is playing offense. There are people, for sure, there are smaller guys that are skilled at that. And, you know, you as a black belt, me as a brown belt, Roger's a purple belt. Now, Roger is a big guy. Roger's a very big, strong, athletic purple belt. We're both fairly small guys. I'm even smaller than you. But, you know, the higher up, the knowledge, the skill level, the higher up the understanding that you get, the more lucky or the more opportunities you start to see for those chances to attack, to escape, etc. So,
yes.
You know, it's not impossible for us. It's just it's not the safest route to victory.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not impossible. This is how I like to describe what you're talking about. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't break the rules, but it bends the rules. What I mean by that is if I got a guy next to me that's 200 pounds, like anyone that sees us in the street, if they had to choose who was going to win, they would choose the 200-pounder.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the truth is, if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, they would be 100% correct, right? Much bigger, stronger guy with me, just being a physical, normal person. Yeah, more often than not, I should lose. However, with jiu-jitsu, we start bending those rules. In other words, yeah, I know some things that person might not know, and that kind of gives me the chance. It doesn't guarantee anything. And this is where we start getting back into the striking. If that guy hits me, I don't care how much jiu-jitsu I know, right? If he hits me effectively enough, I'm knocked out. Game over.
Yeah.
But if I can play safe, and I can wait for the right times, and I can do the right things, whether it's offense or defense, I have a chance. And that's what we mean about bending the rules. Of course, the more knowledge you have, the more bending you can do, right? But at the end of the day, that bigger, stronger guy should always win on paper.
Absolutely. And if people that are listening are thinking, how do you learn this, you know, this specific kind of jiu-jitsu? Well, let me tell you this, and the professor will agree. I guarantee it. We've never met before, and I already can read his mind. This, what we're talking about, is Helio Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. If you want to learn, then you can find Professor Carlos Diaz, any Gracie University campus, you know, my professor, Scott Phillips, myself, Roger, anyone who is following the guidelines of Helio Gracie and his son specifically, Ryron Gracie, and down the line, this is what you're getting. You're getting this system that will allow you to bend those rules to the extreme, the farthest that you can bend them. We will stack the odds incredibly in our favor. That doesn't mean that we'll win. It just means that we've put all the chips on our side. So it does mean that we have the best chance imaginable. And that's Helio Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
That's what you'll get. So just for knowing, I really wanted to bring up one thing right off the bat there, and it just escaped my mind there for a second. I started training jiu-jitsu in the year 2001, and I trained for probably 5-6 years in jiu-jitsu, what I believed was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because I was 100% a believer in Hoist Gracie, and this is the way I thought at the time. Hoist Gracie and jiu-jitsu. If you're training jiu-jitsu, then you're training what Hoist was doing, and eventually, you train long enough, you'll be able to do what he did. And it wasn't until one day that I witnessed, or that I found something that contradicted what I believed. And it was either, and I can't remember if it was a video or if it was something written or if it was a student or what the case was. But if I'm not mistaken, Professor, it was something to do with you. And I wish that's why it was taking so long before the podcast, because I was trying to find what that thing was. I always said on this podcast that I found something that contradicted what I believed, and then I started training Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in reality. And I wish I could find it, but this is the person. You are the person. I've never had the chance, to say who it was or what it was, but it was definitely you. And it's amazing to finally have you on here. So we're super excited about that.
Oh man, thank you so much. Yes. It is, I told him he should do this as a mission statement. He's mentioned it many, many times, but he should definitely put it out there. It is our goal to teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as intended by Grandmaster Helio. To actually empower the small and the weak. And he used to joke around. I used to say, man, if I had my choice, I would not teach anyone that's over 6 foot tall or 200 pounds. Right. He was joking. Right. He said, they don't need jiu-jitsu. They're already big and strong. It's the little guys like me that need jiu-jitsu. But then he said, I take that back. Maybe jiu-jitsu will make them better people. And I agree with that. But man, it's only in the character of the instructor too, right? So, jiu-jitsu, the way it's taught right now is what has happened to every martial art, which is getting diluted by the popularity of the art, right? Taekwondo, before it became popular, was a very efficient striking art, right? And then as it got popular, you have tournaments and you have rules, because you're going to have rules to have tournaments for civilians and normal people to participate. Now we start getting away from what it really is or what it's supposed to be. And that is, in a way, that's what's happening between the sport and the self-defense?
Yes, it became, the way that I put it, it's almost like, if we're talking about Taekwondo became retail Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Which is...
And I bet you there are some old school guys in Korea who do not practice it that way. They practice it as as a matter of fact, the Korean Armed Forces practices Taekwondo. But trust me, it's not what we see in Taekwondo schools around the country in the U.S.
I have zero doubt that each martial art that is on its face effective, it has some element of effectiveness. Each of those martial arts has at least one practitioner on this planet that could get into a fight and perform extraordinarily well despite who his opponent is, using that art alone. Now, who could say whether they could teach someone smaller, weaker, less athletic to do the same thing?
Yes. That's where we start getting into which one is the most practical, right?
And that matters the most.
Yes, absolutely. And and we're talking about self-defense and we're talking about fighting and and that to me is all good. I think that's why we all started doing martial arts to begin with. But man, I always ask this question, like, who is your biggest opponent? Right? Like, we always talk about beating this, this virtual opponent that maybe we haven't met, or maybe there's a guy, in tournaments we get to know each other, and that's the guy to beat and so on. But to me, being an older practitioner, the number one opponent is ourselves. Right? So I think what Jiu-Jitsu does, and it happened to me around purple belt level, we start thinking about what we need to change in our lives to get better at Jiu-Jitsu. And now we start thinking about other things. Cross-training, nutrition, good sleep, your approach to Jiu-Jitsu. Because I know I started with guys who are nightmares on the mat. And they are not training today. Why? They tapped too late. They accumulated too many injuries. And they all joke around and they say, Carlos, are you still training? I say, heck yeah, I'm still training and rolling all the time. I teach classes every day. And they're like, how do you do it? I said, dude, it's the approach, right? It's kind of like the beautiful thing about Jiu-Jitsu, it teaches confidence by the things that you can do. But it also teaches humility, because I don't care who you are. You will tap sometimes. Right? Oh, so the more you learn to do that, the longer you get to stay on the mat.
And another, I've been asked that exact same question. How are you still training when these guys who are doing so great, they're like starting like a house on fire, blue belts tapping out purple belts, they're long gone, and I'm still training. How could this be? Well, I can tell you, they care way more about tapping than I do.
There you go.
They care about winning. I don't care. I just care about training and making everybody else a little bit better today than they were yesterday, propagating, passing along the technique like it was passed to me, and ensuring that nothing is lost in that translation. So why would I stop? Why would I ever quit that? So it's a different thing for us. It's not the same thing. We're in two different worlds.
Yes. So I joke around, and I tell my friends that, and these are like well-known guys that I won't mention their names, but I joke around and I tell them, I'm going to beat you and become the world champion. And they just laugh and they say, Carlitos, how are you going to do that? And I said, man, I want to be on the mat longer. So when I'm 80, 85, or 90, I'm going to say, hey, you want to roll? And you say, no, I can't. I got a bad knee, a bad shoulder. I'm like, there you go. I just won. I won by attrition.
That is the truth. That's absolutely the truth. Because, you're right. In, let's see. I'm 42 at this moment. You said you're 61, Carlos?
Correct. Yes.
So what? That's about 40 years for me, about 20 years for you. Literally, at that point, the greatest sport jiu-jitsu people in the world will absolutely 100% be retired, because they're not expected to continue. They are those houses on fire. They're burning it up.
And,
yeah. Nobody expects them to keep going. But we will absolutely, unless one of us is dead or God forbid, something horrible happens. And even in that context, we'll still keep going.
Correct.
So we'll be on the mat. We'll be training. We'll be ready to roll. And they won't be. So,
yeah, and I don't think I have that mindset. If I was a 20-year-old guy that has been training for 10, 12 years and now I have aspirations about how far can I go, right? So, like for example, a good friend of mine, Gracie University student/instructor, Brian Ortega, started young, right? Killer on the mat. He said, I wonder how far I can go. Then he went to the UFC, right? And of course, you know, he did pretty well. He got in the top 3 in his weight class at 145. But what's the price, right? Yeah, a couple of injuries there, right? So don't get me wrong. I think he served him well. You know, he was, you know, he's financially independent and he's got all the accolades of the world class guy. But that is a different take than somebody like me who started later. And now the way I win is how long I can stay, not what I can do in 3 5-minute rounds. Totally different focus.
Yes, victory. That's classic Helio Gracie, and this is something that Roger and I talk about with our common friend Nick Cooley. It's victory is how you define it, and a lot of people would scoff at that and say, "Well, I could say, you know, if I get tapped out 10 times, if I define that as a victory, I'm still a winner." But that's not what we're saying. It's that. You know, in its most basic form, if you don't lose, then you will eventually win.
Yes. I used to say that all the time.
This is it. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So it's how you define victory. If for us, we're not going into the UFC. It's not going to happen. I can't get myself in good enough shape at 42 years old and accrue the auxiliary skills to deal with wrestlers as far as like preventing the kind of takedowns and resisting, you know, that type of explosion. That's a whole, you know, that's another. It's a whole 20 years of practice.
Yeah. And it's not only that, it's also the body, right? Like, I mean, we have to acknowledge that, like, this is how I feel today. I feel that when I'm healthy and pristine, I can get pretty close to what I was, you know, in my 30s, right? So, but if there's any injuries, and I have very few, but I've had a couple, the recovery process is way longer. Oh, yeah. As compared to when it was 25 years old. You know, being 25 years old, you get tweaked 2-3 days later, you feel 100%, no problem. Now, 2-3 weeks, right? So we have to be smarter, right? We have to be smart about how we do it as we get older. Because if you think about it, like young kids, you know, they have aspirations of winning a local tournament, a regional tournament, or maybe even go professional. But for us, a little bit older, it's more about lifestyle, right? Like, this is now part of our lifestyle. This is something that when they ask us, how long are you going to do this? Until the last day of my life, right? If that's the case, you cannot go into a place that is so explosive and potentially reckless that you can't walk properly anymore because you got a bad knee, you got a bad ankle, somebody put you in a heel hook, somebody tweaks an arm lock. See what I mean? Like that. I saw a YouTube video. I wish I can remember it now. The guy was a purple belt, and he said, "Jiu-Jitsu saved my life, but destroyed my body."
Oh yeah, this video Richard Bressler was talking about the other day on our podcast. But please go ahead.
It's so sad. Like, to me, that's so sad, right? Because now, 10 years from now, all he's going to talk about is the glory days. But to me, the past is the past. What can you do today? Right. So, you know, yeah, it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. The thing that stinks the most about that is most definitely there were influences in his life that were reinforcing those behaviors that were the worst for his body and for his jiu-jitsu career. So victory for him was to explode. Victory from him was to escape from the, you know, like, you're being held in an uncomfortable position. Well, get up from there. There's only a few seconds on the clock. Well, you need to escape. So forcing those types of, techniques or opportunities, it's akin to, or is literally resisting what is. And resisting what is is potentially the direct root cause of the most injuries in jiu-jitsu combined in the entirety of all of jiu-jitsu. People are resisting reality. So I know one thing. The first week that I started training jiu-jitsu, I posted my hand in a weird way, either going for a takedown or preventing a takedown. It was something to do with a takedown, and I hurt all 4 fingers and my thumb to the degree that I was 100% sure at the time that my entire hand was broken. It was black. I couldn't grip. I couldn't use my hand at all. Not 1% I couldn't use it. Now, I would say maybe a week later, 7 to 10 days later, I was able to fully use that hand to grip. 100%. I was training on the mat again 10 days later. Now, cut to Roger. When was this? When I made the incredibly dumb mistake of asking you to wrist lock me. What year was that?
It's got to be probably about 5 years ago.
So 5 years ago, I would have been 37. So 37 years old. For some reason, at some point in jiu-jitsu, you start to really dig deep. And we've said again and again on this podcast that this was a terrible idea, and we would never recommend students, listeners, anyone to do this. But I had asked Roger to wrist lock me, to full-on wrist lock me, and then I was going to try to work my way out. Just a horrible idea. And so you can only imagine that the wrist popped. Roger heard that pop and then immediately let it go, and that wrist was messed up. So that injury lasted, it was probably hurt for 2 months or more.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a wrist lock. So a potentially broken hand at 20, I guess I was 20, 21 years old, heals in a week. A wrist lock, the pain of a wrist lock sticks around for 2 months or more at 37. So if you're not, that's a form of self-defense in itself. If you're not protecting your joints and rolling or training in a way that you stay away from those dumb, that was a dumb mistake because I did it I asked for it.
Yes.
But the lesson is the same. That pain for a 37, 42, 52, 60-year-old man is not the same as pain and injury for a 20-year-old. So you've got to be wise when you train jiu-jitsu. So I think that's what we're saying here.
Yes, absolutely. And if you do it right, you can do it forever. And to me, jiu-jitsu has been so beneficial in my life that I feel that anybody who's willing to learn, I want to teach them in a way that they can do this for as long as they want. I don't want them to come back 3 years later and say, I love jiu-jitsu, but I hurt this part of my body or that part of my body. That to me is unacceptable, especially with a person that has, a family, they have a career. I got a couple of guys that actually, your wrist lock reminds me of this. Like, I've had 4 or 5 students that when they were signing up and they were asking me questions about what they should expect, the one thing they said is, I'm a little bit concerned about my hands because I make a living using my hands. And I'm talking about a dentist, another guy is a cosmetic surgeon, another guy is just a guitar player, so he just thinking about it as a hobby. All those guys want their hands pristine. They don't want to get hurt. And I also have special operators, guys from Army 7th Group, Green Berets, all those guys, combat controllers from the Air Force. The last thing, they want to train hard, but they don't want to train in such a way that they have to go tomorrow morning and talk to their commander and say, I can't deploy because I tweaked my knee. Right?
Yeah.
That will destroy their career. So they want to be challenged. They want to learn practical jiu-jitsu, especially for those guys that are in the military. But they want to do it in such a way that they are safe. Interesting enough, the military people who are not in special operations and they're doing other jobs, they are the ones that are a little crazy because they are the wannabe, operators.
Sure, yeah. They want the crazy.
But the actual operators themselves, the Navy SEALs, the Rangers, all those guys are like, no, we have to save that for the real war, not for training. So it's very interesting.
Absolutely. And I believe I have on this topic, I potentially have one of the most unique perspectives, or in a small group of people that have one of the most unique perspectives on this, on the entire planet. And let me, explain why. So, and I do believe, of course, you can train hard. You can be under extreme fire and extreme pressure in the most controlled and safe, and almost impossible to create injury or to be injured way imaginable. And the reason that I know this is my professor, Scott Phillips, is a retired Navy SEAL. He's trained the guys at SEAL Team 6. He is, like I said, I spoke to you previously, a 3rd degree black belt under Helio Gracie. So you can only imagine the intensity of the roles and, the classes in general. The grind is incredible. It is an unworldly type of grind in those classes. But the vibe and the level of care and concern and self-defense for everyone else is exactly what you would see if Henner and Hedon or yourself, someone very equally legit to the Professor Phillips was there. You would see that same care and concern and protection on the mat, despite that level of intensity. So, I trained years. I got my brown belt under Professor Phillips with that type of intensity, and rolled with him specifically. I don't know, probably over 100. I don't know, a bunch of times, and was never even close to being injured, not once.
Yeah. You see, that to me is a sign of a true black belt. A black belt should be a guy that the little kid, the woman, or the male white belt that is scared to even roll for the first time can roll with that black belt. And when he's done, he's like, man, this was fun. This was like going in a roller coaster in Six Flags over Georgia, like total fun. And down, like on the other side is that black belt that said, man, I want to roll with that guy because that guy is so good, so technical. He gives me such a hard time. You want to be able to cover that full spectrum. What you don't want to be is that guy that's like, man, listen, that black belt is amazing, but don't roll with him because, man, he's just going to hurt you, even though he doesn't mean to. He doesn't have throttle control. He's accelerator all the time, right? Yeah. So that to me is kind of like, man, how long can you keep that up? I've met those black belts, right?
Oh yeah.
And those guys, guess what? They quit around the 40s and 50s if they don't have any injuries. And the reason why? Because they can't keep that intensity up anymore. And now they are getting injured just by pushing the action.
Of course. A lot of times the whatever the vibe you bring to, if we're just talking about a role here, whatever vibe one person brings to a role, and not necessarily with me or with you, this is just average Joe.
Right.
What the vibe that person brings to the role is most times what is reciprocated. So if you run into, you're a buzzsaw then you're probably going to get buzzsawed back. And that's a formula for disaster right there. And Roger specifically, Roger and I have experienced this many times, but thankfully not anything to do with our Professor Phillips or the Gracie Academy, Gracie University, none of Helson or none of those places. These are the top level, most legit people in the world, including yourself. But another way that I was also going to dovetail on this, exactly what you were just saying, the truly skilled jiu-jitsu instructor or truly skilled practitioner is someone who can roll. In my case, with my she's now 6, my 6-year-old daughter, when she was 3, could roll with her, play jiu-jitsu, and roll with her for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And in that roll, she feels like we are neck and neck. This is,
yes,
a close fight. And next time I might get him, this time he might get me, but we are equals. We are a close fight, and I'm getting better. He's getting better. We're making each other better. Now, we could turn around and white belt, first class, walks in the door, and normally we don't roll with beginners, but let's just say for this case we do. We roll with this white belt first class and challenge them how they come in the door, timid or explosive or however it is, that we challenge them right up to the point where it's just fun and challenging and exciting for them in the exact same way that it was for that 3-year-old. So they think, man, this is for me.
And you know what? And to go with that is that, think about this. Let's say that, I'm teaching a technique in my class, and then we roll. And the student is doing the technique as best as he can, but I totally shut him down. Like, don't let him get anywhere near close. How is he going to leave that class that night?
He's going to feel like a failure.
Exactly, right? And what are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be building their confidence by teaching them this art called jiu-jitsu, right? So the way I like to roll with students is if I see them doing everything as close to perfect as they can for their phase in their life of jiu-jitsu, then, man, I let them go to the end and let them tap me, and I tap. I say, yes, that was excellent. And they get a smile on their face, and they get just a little more confidence, right? And they leave that class saying, I was able to execute this move. I know he cannot get it to me and stuff, but man, I think I got it. And that is teaching.
Exactly. It's exactly something that I believe it was the last episode Roger and I talked about this, is that sometimes Roger and I are in 2 different towns right now. Work has taken us to 2 locations. But sometimes before we would, in the past, go to class, Roger would tell me something like he's feeling a little bit stressed that day or whatever the case may be. And then I would ask him, today, I would like you to go to class and let everybody in the class tap you out. But don't tell them, don't tell them a word that you let them tap you. Just tell them good job and keep going.
Yes.
So that was, yes.
And when you build them up, and then those white belts become purple belts, now you can start testing yourself. Now there is a certain glory for them to catch or you to catch them. You see what I mean? That's different, because we have built them up to a point that now they are legitimately threatening, which is cool. By that point, they have enough confidence to be able to take the challenge. But it's the beginning. I think white belt, blue belt are the 2 hardest belts.
Absolutely. And just to add on that, just before moving on, for the, so he would tell me that he was a little bit stressed or what have you, that be under attack and to be under fire like that, rather than attacking back and using that type of aggression, witnessing and being aware and watching what is happening is such a more beneficial way to handle stress and to process that stress than creating aggression. So at that time I felt like that was the most wise move, all the way around. So not only did it benefit the students, benefit Roger, just seems like that's the best way to handle stress in your own life. It's never going to be, hey, I'm having a stressful day. I think the best thing that I can do right now is to just explode. Never.
Right.
That's just my ideas on that. I do have one question
Sure.
for you. So you've trained alongside with, etc., some phenomenal jiu-jitsu people. You'd mentioned Eddie Camden, Hanner Hedon, Brian Ortega. You've been on the mat with Helio Gracie himself. Is that right?
Well, Helio, yeah, back in the day, I was just kind of like a beginner blue belt. I think I had a the first time I met him, I was a 4-stripe white belt. And then later, I was a blue belt, yes.
So early, back in the day.
Mm-hmm. He was 90. I think when I met him, he was in his early 90s, right? Like, and just so you know, my mindset at the time, because, back in those days, jiu-jitsu was basically for fighters. It wasn't for the everyday Joe, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it was super, crazy, challenge. And of course, I guess the reason why I'm okay with tapping is because I started when I was in my mid-30s, right, 35, and all these guys much 10 years younger than me, 20 to 25 years old. So I'm like, man, these are aspiring fighters. I was already, already had profession. I was, software engineer, working for a computer company. So this is kind of my outlet, my hobby, right? And I thought, I'm only going to get a blue belt and I'm going to quit because I don't want to get injured like these guys. I just want to know enough to kind of cover what happens if I go to the ground, because I was a pretty good striker and I loved Thai boxing and that's what I did and that's what I loved, right? But on the ground I knew nothing, which is why I just wanted to get to blue belt. And then I saw Helio at 92 and I said, oh my God. I thought it was just a legend. I thought it was just like a little story, but this 90-something-year-old guy just stepped on the mat and started just moving and doing things. I'm like, I've never seen a 90-year-old man doing what he's doing.
Right. Like doing anything,
right? Like just the way he moves and the way he walks and the way he's doing these techniques and his laughter, his passion. Like you can tell that he was really enjoying himself. And I'm like, I want that. That's what I want to be. So he was an inspiration to me to stay on the mat as long as I am now, because what I was seeing back then was kill or be killed. And I'm like, I'm going to just put my toes in the water, but I'm not going to go deep in. I'm going to get a blue belt and quit. That was my intent.
It's the same, 2001. I came in kind of towards the end of that whole thing, but it was definitely still alive. And I certainly took my fair share of beatings. Just a strange story. I remember telling my wife the other day. I've told her a bunch of times actually, because it's something that I remember literally pretty much every other day or so. In the first jiu-jitsu class that I ever took, I was in that class for about maybe a little over a year. And my number one opponent that I took the most amount of abuse from was this maybe 40, 50-year-old lady who apparently had worked at a library or something like that. But she had been in those classes and had been going hard in those classes. And like you said, it's just kind of fighting and people that are seriously training to fight. And somehow she had stuck through that. So she's in there with them. And I'm showing up as a brand new, know nothing, brand new white belt. So who do you think she's aiming at? She's crushing.
Yes, fresh meat, right? Yes.
Oh man, constant. I took countless beatings. I remember being guillotined against the wall probably 20 times. Just some of the craziest kind of submission you can imagine. I took them. So,
and man, back in those days, all schools wanted to create a stable of fighters, right? So there are people like you and me that kind of stuck around, that the only reason why we didn't do what they were doing is because maybe we're a little bit older, or we were just like, no, we don't want to get that kind of injury. But that's what they're looking for, right? That person with that high pain tolerance, never quit attitude. But, just like Helio said, hey, you guys are already tough, right? And Jiu-Jitsu just going to make you a tougher knucklehead.
Right.
So the question is, what happens to the small and the weak? And I think that's where we come in, teaching Jiu-Jitsu as a lifestyle. And don't get me wrong, if you start young, you could be a killer like Brian Ortega is. But for everyday person, this is just a safer introduction to a martial art, because, Jiu-Jitsu is like playing with knives, right? You can play with knives, but you gotta be careful, right?
Yes, and they say, we're giving wings to the rattlesnakes, right? That's something that...
Yes, exactly.
The way that I think about that is, if I see a big guy that I say, hey, that guy right there has the potential to actually really hurt someone. If they were to fight somebody, they could really hurt them. And if they learn jiu-jitsu the wrong way, they might end up killing somebody. So I have an obligation. Once I see that, I have an obligation. As long as that person has a true, like a truly good spirit, a good heart, I have an obligation to teach them the gentle, the way that it's supposed to be taught. And this is exactly what happened to Roger. Roger's, like I said, big guy, strong, athletic, the type of person that even when he came in the door had the potential to just crush probably 80% of the class, excluding the advanced students. But what I believe, and now it's true. I've concluded it's absolutely the truth that with jiu-jitsu, the proper method and the ability to pass that method along, that Roger is not a threat to anyone, even the people that, if someone was to pick a fight with Roger right now, they're in good hands. If they pick a fight with you or I, Professor, they're not going to get hurt. Right. We're going to take care of them in that fight. And I think the greatest gift that I could personally give to humanity at the time that I met Roger was to teach him jiu-jitsu the way that I learned it, so that he could pass it along and, internalize it the same way that I did, that you did, the Helio Gracie way, so that, to save the countless individuals that could potentially be harmed down the line. And you've certainly done that, Roger. You would agree, Roger, we have on our channel an example of someone who wouldn't take no for an answer and basically forced you to fight. And how would you say that fight went, Roger? Did you hurt him?
No, I think he walked away in pretty good shape. So
he walked away with zero. We're talking zero injuries, no punches, no broken limbs, no choke outs, maybe some pressure, maybe a back, your back on the ground is not comfortable with a heavy individual, a much bigger individual on top. especially if they know jiu-jitsu, how to use pressure and body weight. Your back is on the concrete, but it could be so much worse. That is the point. And just a side note, by the way, I was able, oddly enough, to get that video to Rener. And to that video, Rener said it was awesome. So he approved, and that was, I don't know if I ever told Roger, but that right there was, it's almost like the whole thing comes full circle. It's yes, Roger is, you were right. That's exactly what you should have done, and we should continue to do for the rest of our jiu-jitsu careers, is find these individuals, introduce them to the way that jiu-jitsu was taught to us, the Helio Gracie way, and the world will be so much safer and such a better place if everybody has the same mindset that we have, that Roger has. No more street fights where people get their faces punched in because they're too aware. They're too jiu-jitsu savvy. So that's the way that I look at it. Do you see it the same way?
Absolutely. I've done, I started martial arts very young. I started at 14, and I've touched all the major ones. Each and every time I moved from one to the other, it got a little bit more contact oriented. And the last two were, of course, Thai boxing and jiu-jitsu. And out of all those styles, jiu-jitsu is the only one where you can control the aggression. You can be as nice or as brutal as you would like to be. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't throw a punch at 20% and say, oh, this is all I need. Just a little punch or a little kick to keep them at bay. No, you're swinging. You're hitting hard. In jiu-jitsu, I can apply an arm lock very softly and talk to my opponent and say, hey, chill out, relax, I'll let you go. Or you can do it so fast that you don't even give them a chance to tap, right? And that will be what, people in military have to do when they're in the battlefield. I don't have to do it, hopefully, unless somebody breaks into my house or something like that. But jiu-jitsu is the only art that you can do that with, where you can control the level of aggression.
Right. It gives us a contextual option that doesn't exist otherwise. So there is a context where we would want to do damage. Like you said, if there's multiple people that we're fighting one person and we can see he's got a friend that's trying to close the distance and get a little bit closer to get involved, and we just want to deal with this guy as fast as possible so that we can address his buddy. So we might just break that arm, or it sounds hardcore, but circumstances demand whatever the technique that we use, the circumstance calls for. So, if it's a fair, like we were just talking about, it's just a one-on-one fight, or a bully type situation for a kid. There's no reason for them to hurt the person. There's no reason for us to hurt another guy if it's just a one-on-one fight. We don't need to do that. But if the person is fighting extremely dirty, or they're not playing ball, they're not taking no for an answer, then we may potentially have to turn it up just a little bit to say, hey, look, this could be worse, and let's let it end here. And this is negotiation, part of the negotiation process.
Yeah.
We have that option though, and you're going to be hard pressed as a listener out there to find that option elsewhere. You will find it with us. You'll find it with Carlos Diaz, the Gracie University, Helio Gracie. Although Helio is he's a unique individual. But he might just, well, I'll leave Helio out of it. If you got a question for
well, if you talk about that generation, Helio, which has been, at my school a few years ago, and Hensel, which I have not met yet. I'd love to meet him and train with him. But that generation of Hoyce and Hickson and all those guys, man, they were trying to prove to the world how effective jiu-jitsu is. So, they came from that fighting phase where the only way to prove jiu-jitsu was to step on the mat against anyone of any size, of any weight class, and so on, right? That's phase 2. Phase 3 is kind of like the third generation. We're talking about Huron and Henner, right? And they're now bringing it to the masses. The masses cannot train in the same way as the fighters in the past. And we've been talking about this pretty much most of this conversation is because of avoiding injuries, right? Because, man, for every 1 or 2 champions out there are many bodies laying on the side, which were their training partners that got hurt along the way. I have met many guys that train way back with some of those guys that we know, and they're like, man, we got hurt doing this and we got hurt doing that, right? Getting ready for fights. So there's no growth for the average individual if that's the way to train 100%. The way Hickson and Hoyce trained back in their day. They did their thing and they became, the example of how effective jiu-jitsu can be. But like all warriors, they also have scars, right? Yeah. So, are we trying to duplicate their efforts? We don't have to. They already did it for us way better than we can. We have to take it past that about how do we do this as a lifestyle. And oh, by the way, we can defend ourselves against 90+% of the population by knowing this art, right? Like, so the self-defense aspect will always be there, but we also have to be conscious how that art doesn't hurt us, like that video that we were talking about.
Yes, exactly. And what kind of image popped in my mind there is that Hoyce and Helio and Hickson, these guys, they're basically they were trained their whole lives for war, in a manner of speaking. And then they went to war, spent a long time in war, and got shot a bunch. They have their war scars, their wounds. But that type of war lingers. So, a second ago I was saying you got, a question for Helio, ask Helio. But Helio is a gentle guy. He's a nice guy as well. He is a great instructor. We've trained with Helio several times. He's my professor's professor, and the nicest guy in the world. He's just a fantastic guy, and he's also, like I said,
for sure. Yes, he's the one out of all the brothers. We talk about Horion, Hickson, Hoyce. He reminds me of Grandmaster Helio more than any other. Just in the way he talks and the way he carries on, I'm like, oh man, that is Helio. Because, really, it's funny.
And you know what? There's an example we've talked about on this podcast in the past. My professor talked about it the other day, and Roger, we joked about this a couple of times. But and I'm not going to tell it in the same way this time. But last time that we trained with Grandmaster Helio, he was showing us a series of different techniques. But one specifically was his side control, and how tight, how good that side control was, regardless of how big and skilled the bottom person is. And like I said, Roger, at that time, you're what, 250 at that time?
Right. Yeah, it's 250.
250, 6'3", a purple belt, and a purple belt that competes at the high level in sport competitions. He's a self-defense guy, but also loves to, compete and does well, wins gold, silver, does really well. But Helson still wanted to put him on the bottom and hold him down in that side control. And Helson's like 70 at this time, had just been in a street fight, so he's all scratched up and injured. There was a little question there about, well, how do you, is this going to be able to hold down, somebody Roger's size or his skill, this skill level? So basically Helson, with his old school mentality, was just like, get down there. Like, I'm going to hold you down. Let me show you. And that mentality at 70 years old, by the way, he did. He did well. Helson is amazing. Roger's amazing, but that technique is awesome. But that mindset right there of, I'm ready to test it no matter what. Even though I'm 70, even though I'm 130 pounds, injured from a fight got into a week ago, because it's built into him, the Helio Gracie way. There's a question, we're going to test it right now regardless. Yes. And that's exactly what you said. He's the most like Helio, because no matter what, he's willing and ready to test it at all costs. And that's awesome.
For sure. Yeah.
One question for you.
Yes.
A second ago, I talked about a mutual friend that we have, and of all of these high caliber, top level, elite individuals, including the Gracie brothers, Rener Gracie, all these guys, you've been on the mat with another high level, elite individual that we have also, and that's Nick Cooley.
Yes.
What do you know about Nick, or he's trained on your mats?
He's been at my school a couple of times. He actually trains out of a school in Panama City, which is about 55, 56 miles away from me. But Nick is interested, right? Like, yes, I love his passion. I love his approach. And, I think he's doing jiu-jitsu for he has the right reasons to do jiu-jitsu. He puts himself and he challenges himself. And it's not about what he can do against others. It's more about putting himself there to find his edge, right? To find the potential. And that's beautiful. To find what you're made of. Yeah.
Yes. So I've talked about this before as well. First time that I ever met Nick, he approached me on the mat, and I thought, man, this guy is, if he wants to roll, I'm going to have to really be careful to not hurt him. I'm going to have to take it easy on him. Otherwise, it's going to be easy to hurt this guy. So I'm going to just take it easy and then move on to the next person. And, we rolled, and there's absolutely no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no reference that any technique that I did or any pressure or anything like that had a negative effect on Nick. And I noticed that right away. So I wondered at that time, if jiu-jitsu actually has become, started to be effective at jiu-jitsu, or if I'm just wanting this to be the case. So next time we roll, I'm going to put the pressure 100%. And
he'll love it. He loves the challenge.
And that's exactly what happened. I try to crush 100%, and the entire roll, Nick is like in heaven. He's like as happy as he could possibly be. So, and that's when I personally knew. I was like, oh yeah, Nick is a real jiu-jitsu guy. He wants to defend, he wants to survive, and if it's there at the end, he'll take it. That's the most jiu-jitsu kind of approach that you could possibly have. And not only with me, I'm at that time when I met him, 140, maybe 155 pounds, 5'3", 5'4", so not big, but able to give enough pressure that I could be uncomfortable. But like I said, Roger's 250 at the time, and Roger came to the same opinion that you will have to really try to crush him. And that kind of mentality, defense, and willingness to go there, the willingness to fight or to roll is and to be so outgunned, so outweighed, or the athleticism, skill, whatever, all that stuff is stacked against his favor. And Nick Cooley is the type of individual that will fight and roll regardless, and truly believes that he will survive, truly believes he will win, and will train with you and I and Roger that last day, that final day that we're on the mat before we all pass away. We'll look over to our left or right, and there Nick Cooley will be, because he's won too. So, definitely to hit on Nick.
Yes, for sure.
He's one of our good. Sure.
And I find people like Nick very inspirational, because think about this, right? Like, if you take a look at, the amazing guys that you see in the jiu-jitsu competitive world, and let's pick the top guy, Gordon Ryan, right? He's under 30 years old. He's in the peak of fitness. I mean, take a look at his pictures. He's amazing. Like, there is no reason why he shouldn't be the champion of the world, right? Like, he put in the time, he put in the work, and you can see it. But what about the Nick Cooleys of the world? Or what about, I had a student, he moved to Spain, but I had a student that started at 65. And when he said, oh, can I train? I said, of course you can. We're going to be very kind to you. So I said, yeah, but I have a couple of problems. And I said, what? He says, well, I have a bad back. And I said, well, that's okay. We'll take it easy. He said, no, you do not understand. I have titanium rods holding my back together. I'm like, what? Okay. Well, maybe you can roll. We'll do the moves and you can drill them, but we are not going to live roll, right? Great. He said, well, I got one more thing. I said, what? What else do you have? He says, well, I have a bad heart. And I have this little pacemaker stuck in my chest here inside of my, basically controlling my heart. I'm like, oh, man. Sign this waiver here. and we are going to take it very light. Long story short, his name, by the way, is William Mitchell. He lives in Spain. He's now a brown belt. Wow. He's 76 years old. He just came to visit here like a couple of weeks ago. That's why it's on my mind, but he went back. He's teaching at a Rener Gracie school, the basic class, self-defense class. And if you ask him when he's going to quit, he'll tell you never. Oh, by the way, after he started training for a few years, they took that pacemaker out of his chest. He didn't need it anymore.
That's exactly right there. That is what Helio Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, that's what it can do for you right there. Actually, it's not a cliche. It's reality. What it boils down to is guys like this, guys like Nick Cooley, there's no good reason that Nick should be as good as he is at jiu-jitsu. It's just that he has refused to quit, and jiu-jitsu is that good. When you combine those things, a person that refuses to quit with, jiu-jitsu that is so good, what you get is a person with supreme confidence, high level skill, and the ability to train forever. And what else could you want? This is like the truest gift that you could receive.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, yes, like to me, those people are very inspirational because, like I started in this podcast, I said the biggest opponent you have is yourself, right? And what monster is Nick Cooley battling every day? What monster is Mitch battling every day? And I got people that are battling, either PTSD or Parkinson's disease or things like that. But guess what? Like, they're battling that monster every day. This is not a little jiu-jitsu tournament. This is a battle with life. And that's what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu teach you, to basically have that never quit attitude.
And you know what? You hit it right on the bullseye. I know that when Nick Cooley was young, that his circumstances was, that was on his mind quite a bit. And I've asked him many times, and specifically on the podcast recently, the other day, when you think of yourself, when you think about yourself, do you see any handicap, or do you see any kind of any of those type of issues? And he, with 100%, 100% confidence, he said none, zero, not at all. He's that, not at all. And that right there is, like I said before, that's what jiu-jitsu can give you. It take you from someone that sees yourself, completely one way, as far as you can be to the left, all the way, to the mirror opposite. And it can do that. If you're listening to us right now and you don't believe this, trust me, it's true. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 plus years. Professor Diaz has been doing jiu-jitsu for how many years?
26
years. And he confirms the same. Roger, how many years? You're the baby of the bunch. How many years?
8 years.
8 years. Do you agree with what we say?
Yes.
100%. So we've got, almost 40 years or over 40 years of jiu-jitsu experience telling you, please, the listeners of this podcast, find a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school. Some people would say, find any jiu-jitsu school. I'm not of that, I'm not in that group. I don't believe personally, this is just me, I don't believe in sending people to just any jiu-jitsu school, because you might get a bad situation, depending on where you go. So find a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school. Find a certified training center. You can message myself, the Jiu-Jitsu Robot Podcast, Roger. I'm sure you could speak to Professor Diaz, and we will help you. We are in the business of helping individuals fall in love with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and kind of come to the same conclusions that we've come to. And at the end of that rainbow, by the way, is effectiveness in the most effective fighting art on the planet. So that's the one thing that we really haven't hit on a whole lot. And that's probably the selling point, for the most part. But it's the thing that we've hit on the least, because we have been affected so greatly by the secondary, what is the word? Everything else to do with Gracie, the benefits, the secondary benefits of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. The effectiveness in fighting and defending yourself is just a bonus. But it sure is nice. I definitely appreciate that ability. But dang, Roger, any questions or anything that you can think of for the professor that I haven't hit on, or anything at all?
Yeah, I really love the approach of anybody can learn jiu-jitsu, and just hearing that story, about this student that became a brown belt, late in life.
Mitch.
I mean that is going to be the best testament to tell everybody, because it's not only for the young and the healthy and the athletic. Like, anybody can learn jiu-jitsu. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Jiu-jitsu is going to make you a better version of yourself. That to me is like the biggest benefit. And again, of course, the self-defense aspect is always there. But as you get older, I think that's just a byproduct, right? I'm not going to be tapping people at 70 the way I'm doing it now, and I'm tapping less people than I was when I was 50. You see what I mean? So, but, man, I just think that the benefits that Jiu-Jitsu give you, it's hard to describe for somebody that is not into Jiu-Jitsu, because I think we all start with the self-defense being the primary objective. And then as we start getting into it, like I said, at purple belt, I start thinking about what I eat to make myself better at Jiu-Jitsu. I start thinking about, hey, guess what? Partying all the time is not the best thing to do if you're going to train the next morning, right? So you start changing your life for the better. So that to me is a huge benefit. And then, of course, the byproduct, you become a better practitioner. Your self-defense is better. But man, you will change. After you pass purple belt and then on, you look back at the white belt version of yourself and you're like, whoa, who was that person?
Yeah.
That right there is a fact. Not to jump in here, but from white to basically purple belt, certainly my mindset was almost 100%. How can I get better at jiu-jitsu? And then from, at some point, I believe it was probably around there, purple belt. But, well, it was a little bit before that, because I was already doing that with Roger. But I started to think almost exclusively, how can I make everybody else better at jiu-jitsu? And that's one of those things right there, is that it's almost like I went from a entirely selfish person to, still a selfish person, but certainly concerned with other people, much more concerned with the well-being and the benefit of other people. And that's, that surely that adds value to the human spirit. And I was only going to say, add one thing to that. Anybody can learn jiu-jitsu. Certainly, anybody can learn jiu-jitsu if the right person is teaching them. So,
right,
absolutely.
Who that is you're gonna. All I can say to that is, if you take a class, or if you visit the academy, or you can reach out, like I said, and ask someone who knows. But the best way is go take a class, go take 2, 3, 4. We've said in the past, spend a month there if you can. And if you feel like at the end of your time, this place makes me feel better about myself, this place makes me feel at home, I feel like I could defend myself better right now than I could when I came in the door. And those type of things, you're in the right place. And if you feel, the opposite, or if you feel like these guys, these are my, we're enemies, or we are, we're not training partners, we're competition. This type of place, I'm squeezing the wheel before I walk in the door. I am nervous to walk in the door. You need to investigate. You really need to look into that. You shouldn't be nervous walking into jiu-jitsu. That experience should bring you down. You should feel like, I'm at home. I'm with my friends now. So, that's what you're looking for. That's what you'll get from Carlos Diaz. That's what you'll get from Roger Schluter. That's what you'll get from me, my professor, Gracie University, etc. So be looking for that. If you don't find it, don't train there. That's my recommendation. So,
yes, I agree, 100%.
There you go. Roger, anything else?
Yeah, just one quick question. I usually I'm curious about this. What do you think the benefits of taking regular classes versus taking private lessons would be?
It's a great question. I teach quite a few private classes as well. Yes. So in group classes, of course, we have a structured curriculum where we say, this is what we're going to teach. So for example, right now in my school, we've been spending the last month and a half in back mount, right? In back mount, we learn controls, and then we learn submissions, and for the rest of the year, we're going to do submission counters. Now, I got from blue belts to brown belts in that class, right? So this could be a move that could be brand new to a person versus a person I've seen this move maybe hundreds of times, right? So they get to refine. For that person that's seen it a lot, they get to refine the moves, but for that new person, it's a new move. So that's great for a class. As far as accelerating your progress, that's where I think private lessons is a way to do that. So, of course, you're going to progress by going to group classes. Your attendance, the more you go, the more you'll get, of course. But not everybody can go every single day, right? We all have lives, other things like that. So what private classes do is that, at least when I teach private classes, and they were here and I had to teach them, they're going to give you as much as you can handle. So if we do a couple of steps right there, and this is easy for you, we move on faster than the person who has a hard time. So we're going to go at the pace that you can assimilate the information and at the pace that you can actually do the move. So as far as accelerated progress, there is no question that private lessons will help you. Your jiu-jitsu needs to adapt to the opponent. You shouldn't have just one style. So that's what the group class brings. My personal belief, hybrid is the best, right? So where you go to classes 2-3 times a week, and I have some students that do that, and then they come to a private lesson and they say, this is my problem area. I had a problem here. I couldn't escape the side mount, or I couldn't finish a submission when I went to the mount. And that way, we can address what you consider to be your weak area. So to me, hybrid would be the best because you get to touch different body types. But as far as accelerating in your technique, private lessons for sure.
Perfect. That sounds very familiar to what I experienced whenever I first started training with Joey.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that same exact. I would have said exactly the same thing myself. So we think the same way. Now, before we let you go, if you don't mind, I want to try something unique and just kind of rapid fire ask you some random questions that hopefully, or at least I don't think that people on podcasts have asked before. Some random, totally non-jiu-jitsu questions, and you just answer however you feel is necessary. Does that sound okay, Professor?
Sure, no problem. Go for it.
So what is a horror movie, a scary movie that still scares you till today?
Oh, man. Let me see. I think the one that has the most impact on me was the very first movie I ever saw. That was a horror movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, nice. you know, believe it or not, my wife and my daughter, when she was younger, I guess she was maybe 3 years old at the time. We went to the location where that original movie was shot, the gas station, and there are little cabins that you can rent out behind that gas station where that whole chase with the chainsaw.
Yeah.
It's in that area right there. So we were able to spend the night back there and watch those movies.
Man, I would not sleep there.
It was amazing.
So this is the funny part about how I got to see that movie. It was not by intent. It was totally a surprise. So I went to high school in Barbados. That's where I learned English. And there they only had like 4 or 5 cinemas. And 4 of them just show kung fu movies, you know, Jackie Chan, Chen Kuan Tai, all those guys. So I went there to see one of those kung fu movies. I was like, 13, 14 years old? So I went to see one of those movies, but they don't change the billboard. You know, but back in the day, they would have a huge billboard telling you what the movie was, and they'll change it every week to 2 weeks. They still had the kung fu poster up, but the movie that was playing was a horror movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I went there to see a kung fu movie, and I saw something else.
Quite, yeah, definitely something else, quite different. But a fantastic movie nonetheless. How about your favorite food that is the worst for you?
My favorite food that is the worst for me. Oh man, I love bread. So that's like my nemesis. So I try to find the healthiest bread I can. It's hard to resist hot bread with butter though.
Oh yes, absolutely. Are you 100% adherent on the Gracie diet?
You know, I would put myself as a purple belt in the Gracie diet. I use it as a guideline. I'm not like that as stringent as some other people, but I feel pretty good about my nutrition, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, totally understand.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, I just think that's also one of the qualities of a high-level belt. Like, your nutrition has to be on point. My pet peeve is to have advanced black belts that they can't see they're not on their belt.
Yes.
You know, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you can crush me, but you're also crushing yourself. I mean, I know all of us one day we're going to have to leave this world, but it's not going to be by my negligence. It's going to be by either natural causes or an accident. But it's not going to be because they don't have the discipline to say no to something like I should have said no to.
You know what? And to that I would say, if you're a blue belt, in order for you to get your purple belt, if you're good, if you're a blue belt and you're good, in order for you to get your purple belt, if you're overweight, you need to lose weight. If you're a brown belt and you're good, in order for you to get your black belt and you're overweight, you need to lose weight. It's not a thing, I don't think. Certainly these days, maybe it happens some places, but if you smoke cigarettes and you're a blue belt, you're dang sure gonna have to quit smoking cigarettes before you get your purple belt. It's not even gonna be in cards if you're in, around me. But anywho,
yes.
Are you married, Professor?
No, I'm not. I'm single.
Single.
Yeah.
So tell me, what would your response be if you were married or if you had a girlfriend, if that person asked you to watch a chick flick or a movie that you absolutely did not want to watch? How would you respond to that?
Oh man, that's a toughy one. Yeah, I think, and again, I was married before, divorced, I'm single now, I do have a girlfriend. Like to me, relationships is kind of like a give and take, right? So it can be 100% my way and not 100% her way. I don't believe about this. I don't believe this happy wife, happy life. I believe happy couple, happy life, right? So that being the case, once in a while, yeah, I'll go and watch it, but seldom. It's tough.
That's probably the toughest one on the whole deal.
Yes. I'm going to have to tap out on that one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And last question, this would be the easiest one maybe. It would be from me. But are you a hardcore? Well, I think you already told me earlier, but just for the people listening, a dog guy or a cat guy?
Oh, definitely a dog guy. Yeah, I have a 92-pound Doberman here, a few steps away from me. So,
well,
dogs.
Wow.
So you got basically a full-grown buddy there next to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's my buddy. Yeah, he's a little bit older now, but he's prime. He used to pull my bike. I used to be on my bike, and he had pulled me. I clocked him at one time at 26 miles an hour.
Holy moly.
I was flat. I know if I was going to get dumped, I was going to, die right there. But yes, he's my buddy. So we walk all the time, and yeah, he's awesome.
I think I might be the only, maybe I'm one of a handful of jiu-jitsu guys that is hardcore cat guy. But this is a uniqueness, a quality that everybody's got their thing, right? And
yeah,
I'm a cat guy. So, anything else, Roger? Any other weird questions?
Oh, I gotta say, I'm a dog guy as well. I have cats, but my favorite cat has dog-like qualities. But I've had a Doberman too. Great dogs.
Yes, they're very loyal, right? They kind of stick to that one person. So yeah,
old school jiu-jitsu. Right?
And by the way, Helio Gracie, Dobermans. He had Dobermans back in the day.
There you go.
Oh yeah, he sure did. Yes, that's right. There was man, we literally could do a whole other podcast on Helio Gracie and the dogs and horses and swimming, and that's a whole other thing. But suffice to say, there's an awesome history, culture, tradition that we hope everybody joins us. We want everybody. If you're a sports jiu-jitsu guy, we respect that and love that. That's awesome. But those guys are doing a great thing too. But we want everybody to have the ultimate benefit that we've also had. And I think maybe the only way to get that is to experience it through Helio Gracie's method, his mindset and application of jiu-jitsu. So at least give it a try, see if it's for you. It was definitely.
You know what I'm thinking? We're talking about the difference in Helio's, Grandmaster Helio's approach, right? I have a little excerpt that I can send you on text or email, and it was the 20 different points that Helio Gracie looked for in an instructor, or a black belt. Because, once you get a black belt, whether you want to or not, you are an ambassador of the art, right? If you're carrying a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Black belt, and it's funny because if you listen to the UFC and you listen to Joe Rogan, he makes a distinct difference between saying, oh, that guy is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black belt, or that guy is a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Black belt, right? So there are some differences. And we can talk about the approach and everything else, but there are 20 very specific things that Helio looked for. I can call them out if you want, or I can text you and you can use them later.
Whenever I was promoted to blue belt, which took me much longer than it probably took most people that are listening, the thing that we discussed, the individual that promoted me, was exactly what you're talking about, and it was in the original Portuguese. And if memory serves, is the first one coragem?
Yes.
Yes. So courage is the number one attribute that Helio was looking for. And the others are like timeliness, hygiene.
Yes, there's 20 of them. If you want, I'll take a minute to mention them all, and we can expand on that maybe at some other time.
Yes, please.
Okay, so courage, helpfulness, tolerance, simplicity, truthfulness, discipline, physical fitness, respect, technique, honesty, wisdom, impartiality, discretion, conviction, dedication, hygiene, education, mental agility, anthropometric symmetry, which basically means that your body is evenly distributed and your right hand is not twice as big as your left, right?
Yes.
And last but not least, versatility. Those are the 20 points that he looked for. So think about it. You could be a nightmare on the mat, but if your hygiene is not on point, you are never going to get a black belt from Helio. And that's why there are lovers and haters out there, because there are many people that reach brown belt level in Brazil that never got to black belt because they don't fit these 20 points. And then they'll broke off and, they became killers on the mat and they started other organizations. But think about that, right? You could be an amazing guy, but if you're not honest, you're not getting a black belt.
And sorry to cut you off, Professor. I was just
No. I was just saying, any one of these points, like you can grab any one of them, right? And then say, wow, okay, I got 5 or 6 of them. I said, that's not enough.
And if you're not if you're not on a regular basis addressing these in your jiu-jitsu, career, in your classes, lessons, that's an issue. If you're learning from someone that is disrespecting the students or just outright disrespectful, and we talk about this on the podcast as well. Some of the biggest names in sport jiu-jitsu right now are the most disrespectful people and the absolute worst representatives for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Jiu-Jitsu in general that could be, because they lead people away from those principles that are most important according to Helio. And I think they're not just according to Helio, those are factual. Those are things that must, they must exist. Otherwise,
and to go with that, like I think because we are getting away from that and we're totally focusing about who can win this, grappling tournament or even an MMA tournament, I think that people that just approach the techniques to become a fighter, they are just that, martial fighters, right? But for the people who are looking at these 20 traits, you're like, man, I want to work on my education, whatever that is. I want to work on my honesty, my wisdom, my technique, respectful. That's why it's a lifelong quest. This is not like, how far can I go in a particular sport, right? So to me, like we got to start talking about those kind of people that you're talking about, the people that are killers on the mat, but you have nothing else to show the world as martial fighters. They're just fighters, but they don't have the art part of it.
Yes, they're missing the most important aspect. They're fantastic at tapping people out, but they're empty. Roger, you said it last week. Empty seat. They're empty where it counts, and that's a shame. But what this podcast is accomplishing, what we believe, what this podcast is accomplishing, and what we've done tonight here is address these aspects that you just mentioned that Helio believed were most important. That's what our podcast is all about. So we're trying to do our part. This is part of the education, truthfulness. We're trying to do our part. We're trying to pull people into that fold. So, so we're trying. Anything from you, Professor, that you wanted to hit on, or anything else?
No, I didn't know too much about your podcast, and I love your intention. I don't think too many people are enamored about trying to be a champion here or there, and that's all fine, but we get lost in that quest. There can only be, at the end of the day, think about this, right? There can only be one champion, right? I know that we have so many divisions. Like, okay, you won at a black belt division, master class, at a certain weight class. I'm like, yeah, but that is kind of like cutting the pie in such a way to make me look good. See, there can only be one champion. If you had the UFC, there can only be one top guy back in the day. Now there are many top guys in different weight classes, right? So the fact that you're bringing this back about why we need to do, like why this martial art is good for us, why Jiu-Jitsu can help so many people, is beyond trying to duplicate what these world champions are doing, right? So I love the philosophy that you're trying to like educate people on, because that is being lost. That is being lost in today's world of sport. So thank you for doing it. Just keep on going.
Yes, absolutely. And if that's the one thing that we can do through this whole process, is to kind of weave back in that philosophy, culture, tradition, so that, it's a uniform thing that people say, hey, we need to, we can't speak recklessly, or we can't disrespect the folks that came before us, or things matter. If, if the way that we put our pinky on the mat, if that matters, of course everything else matters, the way that we speak, the things that we say. So, sure, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to keep doing it until the dang cows come home. And, we'll have you on as many times or as soon as you can come back on. It was a fantastic discussion, and we'll do it again soon, Professor.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and keep up the good work. Hopefully we'll talk soon again. And we'll train one day on the mat.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We sure will. We'll be in contact, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Another great one in the books, man.
I mean, what a great guest, and thanks to Nick for reaching out, and he's helping us with the podcast. He's it's kind of like the Jiu-Jitsu robot in Friends.
No kidding. So there you have it for the people that are listening, especially if you've been listening for a while, and you know who we're talking about, Nick. When we say Nick knows everybody, Nick set this whole situation up with Professor Carlos Diaz. He knows him. Yeah, I think that I can't remember how that worked out. I never met Professor Diaz before, never spoke to him, didn't know him. But I think that when Nick moved out there, that he was like, I don't know, there's a lot of schools out here. Where do you think I should train? And I looked in that area and I was like, hey, wait a minute. Carlos Diaz's school is like pretty close enough that even if there's like 10 schools between you and him, you should jump those 10 schools and go to him. So I know that he clearly did that a few times at least. And
I think he's working at the gym that he's training at, so it's kind of like
yeah.
And I believe he was staying there for a little while. So I think if he lived a little closer, he definitely would have trained there, though.
That's the thing. It's the proximity, but he was there enough to make an impression on the professor, and there's no other reason why than Nick's heart and jiu-jitsu prowess and his conviction and all those things that he had mentioned that Helio wrote about, that's Nick right there. So we witnessed it. Professor Diaz witnessed it. And if you're out there listening, you will too. If when you run into Nick or you speak to him or whatever the case may be, you can learn from Nick just like we have and grow from your relationship or your whatever connection you have. You can learn from it too. So, that was an awesome episode. What do you think of those weird questions that I came up with there at the end?
Man, that was great. I'm glad you incorporated that.
Yeah, I think we should keep doing that, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kind of have my go-to question, too, that I've asked a couple of times now. But I'm just genuinely curious to see what these different professors think on the subject. And I have been getting similar answers.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you my weird question, and then yours isn't weird, but you ask me, although, you already know my thoughts. But I'm curious, what is the scary movie for you that even to today scares you?
To this day, probably nothing, but I know as a kid, I definitely I was scared of a few things. I was scared of, after Jurassic Park, I was scared of raptors. I would think like raptors would be, if the house is dark, like, man, I can hear a raptor breathing around the corner. Like, it's going to like jump out at me. You know what? Now that I think about it, I probably am scared of, it's kind of more of those like creepy movies where it's like a creepy entity or maybe a creepy alien that it's unexplainable. Like, it might just like abduct you or something like that. So sometimes I'll get freaked out if I'm in like I guess I'm scared of the dark still, because you don't know if something is like lurking in there. I'm like, could that be an alien? Probably not. Could that be somebody hiding in there? I mean,
the point is that it could be. It could be anything, right? It's dark. You don't know what's in there.
Man, I hope nothing does pop out of me in the middle of the night when I'm getting home, because I just hope it's not a prank. I just don't want to like shoot somebody pranking me, because
No.
I'm so nervous like getting out of my car at some situations. Dude, I am starving, man. I'm ready to go get something to eat. I don't know about you.
I have been literally just grumbling this whole time, starving. So you said the magic word, man.
Dude, let's do it. Let's call this one and another great one in the books, and let's go get something to eat, man. Oh, but by the way, how's the diet been going?
It's going. It's still going. I had a few slips.
Same here. I had a couple little slips, but I'm right back on track.
Yeah, exactly. The point is that we don't give up. We do tap, but we don't quit.
And everybody will be able to see. Like, I've been writing down everything I've been eating. And I think I did miss a couple days, but I remember what I ate, so I'm going to write them in as I remember them.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. I've definitely been avoiding the fried foods and all that crap at work. Definitely improving, but anyway, we're going long here. I'm going to make sure that I message Carlos and thank him again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'll take care. So cool, man. Another one in the books. You enjoy your supper. Tell everybody hello, good night, and we miss him, and we'll see him soon.